Hello and welcome to Rantcast number 2. I have spent the weekend travelling and I got back on Monday, and somewhere along the way I picked up a kind of nasty cold. So that's going to completely undo all the work I've done trying to improve the audio of this, and it's also going to mean that I'm not exactly looking my best right now. But that's fine, I can work with that. And so I've got a few things to talk about today. They'll probably put a couple of them into the next Rantcast. Um, so I guess I want to start at a discussion I was actually having with my friend James on Western views of human rights versus other cultures. And this is something that I find very fascinating because I was raised in the West. I've always lived in the West, and so I see human rights and I think, yes, that's a really good thing. Everyone should have human rights and everyone should have the exact same thing. And that's part of my culture. My culture is human rights for everyone. But I love to play devil's advocate. Um, So I started thinking about other cultures and how Western human rights might seem to them. And it's really going against my nature because a lot of the basic aspects of other cultures is going directly against what I consider to be basic human rights. So there's Middle East or Arab countries that focus very heavily on the male, and Asian cultures focus on males as well, and there's all sorts of things which I don't agree with because they go completely against people's human rights and completely against equality. But at the same time, um, it's a basic part of their culture. If you take that away, you take away part of their culture, and you turn them into the Western world a bit more. And I can easily see something that 50 years down the line, there is just one culture, and that's kind of being hurried along a bit by the internet because everyone can see each other and everyone can share their ideas. And once you get to a certain point, the good ideas come right to the top, and everyone's using the same ideas. So it's kind of weird. I mean, culture is a good thing and divergence is a good thing, and yet we seem to be going away from it a bit in the interest of human rights, which I don't think there's a right answer to this. I don't think there's a good answer to this because there's one good thing on one side and there's one good thing on another, and they're completely at odds. So that's just something which I it's just something I think about. I guess I think way too much, but um anyway, speaking of Western culture, let's go to something which completely demonstrates Western culture and talk about Apple, or more specifically Macs. I'm not really into the idea of Macs. I don't think they're good value for money. I don't find them easy to use, and everyone always tells me I need to buy a Mac. They say they're really great, and they say they're really easy to use, and they say everyone should have a Mac. And so I make 5 or 6 very good points as to why I don't need a Mac and why I can't afford a Mac. And I ask for a good reason why I specifically should have one, and no one can actually ever answer that question. And I think there's a lot of self justification going on in the Mac world, whereby you spend a large amount on a product and then you subconsciously justify yourself. This must be worth that, or I wouldn't have bought it, so this must be better than everything else. And I was actually watching a TED talk a while back, which I will try and find and put a link to, that was talking very much about this kind of thing. They showed prints of 6 paintings to a group of people and asked them to rate them based on which they preferred. And then at the end of it, they picked out number 3 and number 4 and say, we actually have prints left over of these 2. You can choose one, but it can only be one and you can't change your mind. So the people would always choose number 3 because that's the one they ranked as liking the most out of 3 and 4. And a week later, they came and did the same thing and said, here's 6 prints, order them in the ones you like most to the ones you like least. And in again and again and again, they found that the one in number 3 switched to position number 2, and the one in number 4 switched to position number 5. And that's very interesting because it means that they chose something and in their mind that made it better. And it's even deeper than that because they did the same thing with amnesia patients who they couldn't remember things in the short term more than about 15 minutes. And they did this to them with a half-hour gap. They didn't even remember who the researchers were. They didn't remember that they'd done this before. And yet the second time they ordered them, they did the exact same thing. Number 3 gained a place and number 4 lost a place. And I think the very same thing is happening with people who buy Macs. They buy them, and because they bought them, they must be good. And the other thing is they're buying into an idea, a lifestyle, and Apple makes it very clear in its adverts that you're buying an idea and not a product, and people like that idea. They think that by buying the product they can kind of get a piece of that idea, so they buy the product. And that idea isn't original to me either. I got that one from another TED talk which I will try and find. And the final thing I do not like about Macs is that people tell me that I need them, and I don't like that. I know exactly what I need, and I have exactly what I need. I do not need to spend $1,500 on something which I can build myself with what I consider a better operating system for a third of the price. And it just really annoys me that people, without knowing anything about what I use a computer for or why really I have the hardware I have, they just assume that I need a Mac because Macs must be great for everyone. No, really not. And it is past the 9-minute mark, so at the moment I'm just going to stop this there. I was going to talk about the Xbox, the Wii U, the PS4, but I'll wait till next recording to do that. Bye.